So, sisters, pals, we have a good sis here who is having trouble with her business venture.
Okay.
Now, she started a business with a really good friend of hers.
Oh.
Oh, sounds familiar. This is where it takes a turn for the worse.
Okay.
So, a couple months down the line, and sis is noticing a couple of patterns, namely that she feels as though she's the one that's putting more work and more effort into upholding the business than her friend is.
Okay.
Now, a good sis has asked, should she confront her friend
Okay.
and say, yo, where you at? You're not working as hard as I and you're not invested.
Yeah.
Or should she cut her losses and go solo?
Oh, okay. Is that it?
That's it.
Okay. I think this one is an interesting one. When it comes to friendship, money, business, all of that, it's really sticky.
Yeah.
It's the same with like family and business and stuff. I think it's all about communication here. It really takes like sitting down, being honest, having a very transparent conversation, saying, you know, I feel alone in this journey. I feel like I'm doing more than you were doing, as per our original agreement, which is why it's really important to have like a contract or just a meeting where you've laid out your expectations and each of you have agreed to meet those expectations. And then refer back to that and be like, you know, when we had that conversation or in this contract, whatever, you said that this is what you were going to do and you're not doing that. Yeah. Or it could be that, you know, the demands of the business have changed and both of you have had to step up since that original discussion, actually having the conversation to say, you need to do more. And if, you know, give a set period of time, say if, you know, we don't see change in the next 1-2 months, we may have to, you know, come to the decision that we might not be the best business partners, and that's okay. There may be a way in that to preserve the friendship. But I think letting it go unchecked is going to be difficult. And also I think the latter option of like cutting them off is really, really extreme. And I think sometimes it's hard. Interestingly enough, I had a business partner when I started my company and literally in the first few weeks.
I remember that.
In the first few weeks, I had to cut them out, right? And it was... it wasn't cute. And bear in mind, this was 3 years ago. Yeah. We still don't really talk like we used to. So it can get very sticky. And that's why I think always expressing like, first of all, the growth of the business is something you really care about and you're committed to, but also preserving the friendship and trying to make sure that you're doing things and trying to understand the other person whilst growing the business is really important to you as well. So trying to understand, like, is it that your head's just not in the right place? How can I help you? Is it that, you know, I've put you in charge of something you're not really that interested in and that's why you're not really committed? Try and understand how to work with them in a way that's more conducive, that both of you feel excited, but also both of you are really committed. So it's really about communication. But if they still don't want to be pulling their weight, cut the strings. Running a business and carrying dead weight,
it's tight. It's so tight. It's real tight. It's tight.
You think money will drive you mad? It's people. People will drive you crazy. And so if they don't want to pull their weight, then have the conversation about, you know what, it's a purely business decision and in an attempt to, you know, preserve this relationship. Or if you've got to cut ties with the friendship too, then that's another dilemma for another day. But you got to let it go. But I think first, have the conversation. What about you?
No, I definitely agree. It's very much about communication. Being very clear about what you expect in this relationship. I think it might be difficult. If you started the business engagement or like any kind of venture without laying those terms at first. Yes. And I think that's part of the reason why a lot of people think that friendship and business can't mix. Yeah. Because they think that because, you know, you've already got that solid foundation of friendship, there are certain things that don't need to be written down or recorded, or there's no contracts that need to be drawn up. However, it's really important, if not more important, to make sure that you have those things as kind of like base level foundational stuff before you proceed. So if you are in a situation where you've started something with a friend and you haven't had that conversation about who's doing what, like when does this happen, like, and all that kind of good stuff, then this is the point that you need to have the conversation. And I think it's also good to acknowledge that sometimes in business it won't always be 50-50. Sometimes it might be 10-90, 20-80, 60-40, and sometimes it switches. However, if you are observing a pattern whereby it's always 10-90, that's when you need to have the conversation and say, I believe that, you know, you're not pulling your weight, or rather, I feel overwhelmed with the amount of work that I'm doing in comparison to you. And I think just being super straight up and saying like, look, we got to fix this. And if we can't fix this, then let's find an amicable way to part ways. I too think that cutting off is quite extreme. I mean, I hear it. Sometimes it happens. Like you get to the end of your tether. But I feel like you need to address the situation first, communicate first, and then use cutting off as like the last resort. Last resort. Unless there's any fraudulent activities occurring or any kind of money laundering.
Cutting off, you're going to the police.
You're going to jail. If there's any kind of like shady business going on, then okay, cutting off might be a more preeminent act that you might have to take. But other than that, I definitely think that it's really about communicating beforehand and all that kind of good stuff.
Definitely. It's tough. Like you want to start businesses with friends sometimes. And I think one thing that is really important to get off, and it's a key point that you mentioned, where don't assume just because your friend said this is going to work. Like you both have to be willing to put in the work. And I think sometimes we look at our relationship with people rather than their character. And like the example that they've set, like for example, starting a business with you, right? You're my best friend. And I think to myself, okay, putting the best friend thing aside, and yes, we can laugh together, and yes, I trust you, like, do you get what I mean? But looking at your character when you're actually at work and looking at your character with your own business, is this somebody you would want to work with? Like on a level, would this be somebody that you'd work with if they were a stranger? Do you get what I mean? And I think sometimes we give people the benefit of the doubt because they are our friend, rather than thinking, like, if your friend has never been able to keep a job, they've never been able to stay committed to anything that they start, they've never been able to, you know, be consistent in anything, just because they're your friend, it doesn't mean they're going to be a great business partner. All of that doesn't change just because the person likes you. Their character is their character. And yes, everyone has the room to grow and everyone has the room to change, but you've got to know that that's what you're signing up for. So being realistic, like, is this somebody I'd want to work with anyway? Like, not just, oh, it's my friend, it would be nice to have someone I can work with who I like. No, you're building something here, and that takes commitment, and that takes a certain level of character. If that person doesn't have the character, then don't be surprised when you enter into business and now money is involved that they're acting wild.
It's tight.
You know?
It's tight. But pals, please be sending us dilemmas. Remember, you can send them via Instagram DM, via email, and via our website. So don't be a stranger. Send us in your dilemmas.
But
without further ado, Miss Courtney,
Let's get into it.
It's that time. Take it away, pal.
So like we said, today's conversation is going to be about business, 9-to-5 and side hustles. And we're not just talking about whether you should start a business. We've done that already in terms of the things that you should pursue in terms of work and what you should be thinking about when starting these things. But actually